came home one day and I said, honey, I just bought a real estate brokerage. And she's in the business. But anyway, she says, okay, well, what's for dinner? So I don't think she really cared. To put things in context, in third year university, I made $40,000 in commissions. And then in fourth year, I made $70,000 in commissions. And that was to myself. And in those days, it was a 50-50 commission split. And I was to myself, and the accounting firms were offering me 22 grand a year. And I said, guess where I'm not going?
This is The Profitable Broker. And welcome to the Profitable Broker podcast. I'm here with Carlo Racioppo from LePage Realty Plus. And one of the biggest privileges of my life is the community of relationships that I've been able to build in the brokerage business. And Carlo is one of those relationships. I've known Carlo for decades, and I'm not going to say how many decades.
Please.
You might get into that after. But, one of our commitments here at the Profitable Broker is to bring people who are really moving the needle in real estate brokerage. So, Carlo, welcome to the Profitable Broker podcast.
Thank you for having me on. This is an honor.
We're really glad to have you here. When I was thinking about how long we've known each other, I was cleaning out. I keep an archive box of memorable brokerage things from my career, and I was cleaning a box out recently, and it had an announcement from the board. And was it 1991, Carlo? That you got your broker's license? I don't remember the year of it.
1989, I actually got my broker.
It was a notice from 1989. It had Carlo's picture on it, and I got to tell you, it hasn't changed a bit.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, flattery will get you everywhere.
So, Carlo, you've got multiple offices. You've got 140 plus agents, over that number. You've built a huge business over a period of many years. You've been through ups and downs. You've seen the worst markets. And so there's a lot of things that you can share with our brokers today that I know will be valuable to them. But I want to start in the beginning. I want to learn about your journey. Share with our brokers, share with our audience, what got you into the real estate business to start with?
Well, I was at the University of Toronto taking my Bachelor of Commerce degree, and between second and third year, I decided to go get my real estate license. So that would have been 1986. So this year is 40 years. It was interesting because my brother and my uncle were in the business, and my brother said, "Hey, listen, just get your real estate license. I know a developer friend of mine. He's got lots of condos, and you may want to sell them. And hey, let's do this together." So I said, "Okay, whatever." I was going to probably be an accountant because I was doing my commerce degree, and I took a 5-week course in downtown Toronto, and as you know, it was phase 1, 2, 3, and got my license in the summer of '86.
Wow.
And then in third year and fourth year, I still finished school. So I was still a full-time student. But if you remember, Wayne, you and I remember those days. So in 86, 87 to 89, the market was crazy. And, tuition was, now for your American friends, they won't understand this, but tuition was $2,000 in those days. $2,000. Yes. Heavily subsidized, but it was $2,000. And that was a lot of money. But to put things in context, in third year university, I made $40,000 in commissions.
Wow.
And then in fourth year, I made $70,000 in commissions. Wow. And that was to myself. And in those days, it was a 50-50 commission.
I was just going to say that. 50.
And that was to myself. And the accounting firms were offering me 22 grand a year. And I said, guess where I'm not going?
Well, I'm really glad that worked out that way because the industry really benefited. So let me ask this. We got you into real estate. You've completed a Bachelor of Commerce. You're doing really well. The market's booming. When did you decide to take on leadership? When did you decide to get into brokerage?
So in 89, I got my license and my broker's license. Then in 1990, I opened up my own firm at 24 years old. And I left my broker. He was pretty upset about it, but I thought, hey, you know what? I'm going to try this on. I don't know what possessed me to do that. I went on my own, and then 1990 hit. And those of you who knew the GTA or the Ontario market in 1990, everything just collapsed. And it was a rough time. The problem with that, the money I told you that I was making was the worst and best thing that happened to me, because being at that age, making that kind of money, I thought the world was easy. and real estate's a joke. And, this is just nuts. This is, how can this be that hard? And then 1990 showed up and all hell broke loose. And I'd made some investments at 24, 25 years old and lost everything. And it was a rough 4 or 5 years till about 95, 96 when it finally turned around. So again, the worst and best thing that happened to me.
That's awesome. Well, that's it's interesting because one of the questions I often ask, Carlo, is what's the biggest leadership lesson that you learned? And it sounds like one of them was how to invest money or how to look after money in a down.
I'll tell you, it happened to me young, so I'm extremely fortunate. But in 1995 was when I probably bottomed out, had not only broke, I was negative because I owed people a lot of money. And it was, I was 30 years old and I was about to get married the following year. Actually, 96 when I was president of the real estate board. So it was a very busy time, but I bottomed out in 95, 96. And what that taught me was, how they always say, "Hey, Lord, give me one more boom, and I promise I won't throw it away." Well, I remember that, and I literally never forgot that, and I never wanted to be in that place again. And I've never been in that place again. By 98, by 97, 98, I had paid off all my debts, and the money that was coming in from my sales was actually mine. So for several years, for 4 or 5 years, no commissions were mine. So it was really challenging, and that taught me everything. I needed to know financially.
Well, you and I've tried a very similar path, Carl. I was explaining to a group yesterday, actually. We were talking about that time period, and we were in a very similar market, you and I. And at that time, I owned 6 properties, and every property had a mortgage on it for more than it was worth. And I said, if you want a depressing series of events, make mortgage payments on properties that aren't worth what the mortgage is, right? And but it does teach you a lesson, that's for sure. I learned exactly the same lesson. And so you broke out of that. You learned some lessons. Tell us about what really got you to the pinnacle of success that you've achieved now.
Well, then in 1999, Royal LePage, which is a large Canadian franchisor, of course, came to me and said, "Hey, listen, we'd like you to come work in one of our corporate offices and manage an office." But when I found out what they were paying, it was just like crazy low, like it was like insulting. But what I wanted, how I viewed it was I wanted to learn the bigger side of the brokerage. And this was a 50-person office. And even in 1999, that was a big office. So I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to take this tuition. I'm going to make a small salary, but I want to learn that side of the business. Because the sales side for me, I was kind of tired of it. I'd already been doing it for 15, 14 years. And so I said, okay, let me try this. And I ran this office for about a year and a half, but I was not a good employee. I realized that I just couldn't work for someone. And the compensation model was so onerous in terms of recruiting and profit share and profit and all that, that I said, if I'm that good at this and they're going to pay me that, I might as well do this myself. Mm-hmm. So I left them after a year and a half, and I went to go and I wanted to buy a franchise from Royal LePage, but there was nothing available. And they said, bring us an existing company, bring us some agents outside our network, and we'll sell you a franchise. And so I spent the next 3 years in sales. I went back into sales, and I did probably the best I've ever done in sales. But I was also looking for a brokerage, and I ended up buying a 35-person brokerage. It was Prudential at the time. It was a Prudential franchise at the time who had taken over Countrywide, if you guys remember those. And then, of course, much later, Royal LePage took over Prudential. But at the time, it was Prudential, and their contract was up in 2004. And I bought this office, 35 people, went to head office at Royal LePage, said, okay, I found somebody. I found an office, and it was only a kilometer away, I guess a mile away from our old office where I was managing for corporate. And I bought it. I came home one day, and I said, honey, I just bought a real estate brokerage. And she's in the business, but anyway, she says, okay, well, what's for dinner? So, so I don't think she really cared anyway, but, so I bought this office of 35 people, and this was 2004. So I was 39 years old, and I was scared as hell, but you know what? Ended up growing to actually up to 200 people, in one location, in actually 2 locations. Cause then I bought another business 6 or 7 years later in Oakville.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's just how it happened. In 2004, I took over, and Royal LePage was happy to give me the franchise. um, because it was a conversion. So they were happy to give it to me.
You know what's interesting? That's such a great story, Carl, and I appreciate your sharing it and sharing it so honestly. One of the things I was thinking about while you were talking, what I see, and I'm not sure if you see the same thing, but we need to attract young people, smart people into the brokerage side of the business. What would you say to somebody today looking at brokerage as a career? I mean, it's been great for you, obviously. How would you tell somebody to go about?
Well, here's what I would tell them. You have to really go in with the eyes wide open. And I'm not trying to blow sunshine up your butt, but they need to speak to people like you who've been doing this their whole life. Because I think what people do, younger people, they want to own a brokerage sometimes for the wrong reasons. And I think that I actually went in it with the intention of wanting to help and build other people's careers. I wasn't looking at it and I didn't want to do sales anymore, but I knew I had talent in the business. So I thought that if I could take my talents and move it to the brokerage side, hopefully make it work. And I knew that if I could provide value to agents, actual value, that they would want to come and join me and stay with me. And so what I would tell a young person is just make sure you go in with the eyes wide open, understand, don't get fooled by the numbers that you may be looking at. Please dig deep, get some good coaching and consulting, because I think people get into this business thinking that, oh, it's just, all sunshine and roses, not understanding what the whole picture looks like. So, that's probably, I would say not, and I'm not saying don't do it, but make sure you go in with the eyes wide open and the right intentions.
Oh, that's great advice. Get educated. And I appreciate your kind words. As you were talking, we're saying we've done some amazing things together over the years, built companies, owned companies together, done coaching, BMBA, all sorts of great initiatives. If you were the coach today, coaching somebody in the business, what would you tell them to do? What would your coaching be, let's say, over the next year or two to improve scale and profitability? What would you tell them?
Wow, that's an interesting question. Well, I guess recruiting. Obviously, we all say recruiting, recruiting, recruiting. But I found in my business that retention. I grew organically.
Mhm.
I wasn't one of those hardcore recruiters like you tried to get me to be. I grew from referrals. I grew from people in my office. I grew from a little bit from acquisition. But retention was my biggest, I guess, my biggest plus. We have, I think industry average is like 10 to 15% turnover. I've been very low, 2 to 3% turnover. I've studied it. I've watched it. So building relationships with the people that come to work for you, that's critical. I think that there's that individual relationship, that individual coaching and mentoring that I think is critical today. So my advice would be make sure you go in with the right intentions, wanting to help other people get to where they want to be, but don't look at the group as a one group of people that they all think and work the same way. Because Wayne, you and I know that is so far from the truth. It's not funny. Um, Everyone that I have, the 140, 50 people I have now are incredible and like so different individuals. They're just so different that when I speak to every one of them, it's just different. I speak to them very differently because I know what works for them and what doesn't work for them. What's going to trigger something, what's not going to trigger something. So, as our friend Buffini would say, I treat them, or no, actually it wasn't Buffini, it was another gentleman. Rick DeLuca used to say, I treat them fairly, not equally.
Right. Yeah.
And I love that line. I got that from Rick, and so I'm not sure where he got it from, but I remember that. I never forgot that, and I think that's key to running a brokerage.
That's a great name from the past. And I know one of the things that you're committed to, Carlo, is value, bringing value to the people, is helping them move their careers forward. And I think if you're the culture at your company, as a company that you have like 150 people that you could invite over for Sunday dinner, like it's literally that tight.
And I tell people I go to a Christmas party, I know everyone's name.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
I know them all. Like they walk in, I know their name, and like I say it right away. I was like, "Hi Wayne, how you doing? Hi Bill, how you doing? Hi Susan, how are you?" So I make that a key thing. I think you just have to go in with the right intentions and wanting to help them get to where they want to be, because they can see through it. It's so competitive. We live in such an unbelievably competitive environment.
Mhm.
I mean, even our Royal LePage franchise network, I have 8 Royal LePage franchises just in my city.
Yes, of
So
course.
it's not just my brand that I can use as leverage. It really isn't. It's all about us. It's all about me and what and how we're different. And if I could say, if I could add to that, it's like, why would they join you? Like what, why? Like there's just so many choices. There's just so many things that they can choose from. And so you have to be able to answer that question. What is it about you that really does make a difference?
Yeah, and I think not only is it Sunday dinner for you and the Christmas party example, but you not only know their names, Carlo, you know what their goals are, you know how you're going to help them get there. It's really a special culture that you
For
built
sure.
with your
For
company.
sure. And it's every day, man. It's work every day.
Another thing I just want to talk about really quickly. You talked about relationships, and in recruiting today, I had this LinkedIn post that went viral, and the LinkedIn post simply said, "Cold calling is dead." Today we've got to have those relationships. We have to work on referrals, and I think you were sort of at the cutting edge of that. You were doing that before any of us did, and it's just a testament to what you do in the relationship building arena.
Yeah, and we're growing now again. Through COVID, and then things I got a little lazy, frankly. Things got really hot and really good, but the last 3 or 4 years have been a challenge. So now it's just back to those personal contacts
Yeah.
and talk and getting the warm calls, getting referrals from my agents, getting referrals from other people, and then just making that warm call, making that warm meeting. And it really is. And you just try to find out, like you said, I don't get every interview. I try to find out what clicks, what doesn't click. Obviously, we don't click for everybody,
Mhm.
but there's obviously people that we do. So
That's awesome. I have something, Carlo, I call the lightning round. And it's really to help people get to know you better. I've got 4 or 5 questions I'm going to ask you, and they're just really quick questions. What book are you reading there that we should, or what book would you recommend that we all be reading right now?
what book? Oh, gee, Wayne, you could have asked me this before. What book am I reading right now that they, um,
Or listening to on
you know what? You actually recommended it to me, and I'll be frank with you, it was fabulous, and it was Who Not How. I have to say that I'm not the greatest delegator, and and I actually hired someone after I read the book.
That's great. That's
So Who Not How was pretty critical.
Yeah, it's a fantastic book written by my friend Dan Sullivan. If you haven't got it, get it. It's a great one. Podcast. What podcast should we be listening to?
Oh boy. What podcast should this? Mine.
Yes, and it's interesting. You have,
Carlo. I have my own podcast.
and it's an awesome podcast. It's called According to Carlo. I would recommend it highly. And it's interesting. I was thinking about that when you were talking about bringing service to agents. I've been to your office, of course, and you have a phenomenal. You invest in a podcast studio for your folks, and you lead the way. You're not just saying, "Hey, you should do this." You have one of the best podcasts out there. So it's called According to Carlo.
And I try to bring guests. I try to make sure that I try to bring value to the people listening. Hopefully it's agents that are listening.
Mhm.
And so, I try to bring people on that really make a difference.
That's terrific. What's your favorite thing to do in your spare time?
Favorite thing to do in my spare time? Well, when we have some spare time, you know what? Obviously being with the family, playing a little bit of golf, and I do like to travel to Florida when I have time.
Yeah,
I don't like the cold weather here, and so if I can find some time, I definitely like to pop down to Florida.
that's fantastic. And of course, we had the opportunity to have you up to our Florida residence and enjoy a nice
Yeah, it was awesome.
day. So
That was awesome.
we really, really are grateful for that. Let me ask this: what are you most excited about for the next year in our industry? What gets you excited?
What gets me excited? I think that I think the market for us is going to turn around. We might go through a few more bumps, but I think that people are finally understanding through our mentoring, through our coaching, are finally understanding how to deal with this marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I'm excited about is that they're learning to deal with this, they're learning to deal with those challenges. And I know the end is near. It may not come until 2027, which for us is close. But that's what I'm excited about. And I think that we've prepared our people to be ready for that. And so we're constantly on them, constantly providing some value to get them ready for that. And obviously dealing with their day-to-day stuff today. And I find that, Wayne, you and I have been through this. And my biggest challenge today, we talked about what I'm looking forward to, but the biggest challenge today is just dealing with agents and their clients in this marketplace.
Mhm.
And that's what I'm constantly doing on a daily basis. I just had a call with one of my agent's clients. I actually offered to call, and we had a 3-way call on a Zoom, and I got a $1.5 million, $150,000 reduction on a 1.5. I got a 10% reduction on a $1.5 million listing.
Wow.
And my agent was just so grateful because she was just petrified, which was, oh my God, you can't tell them that. You can't tell them that. I go, let me deal with it.
Mhm.
So we just went through the information, went through the data. Obviously my 40 years helped a little bit. And just went through why and what made sense. And guess what? It sold.
It's interesting. People are so lucky to have your guidance. And because if you haven't been through what I call a real estate recession, this kind of market, we had it a little earlier in Ontario. Of course, the United States, it was '08.
Yes.
If you haven't been through that, you don't know, And I love what one of our great clients, Nancy Dykeman, says. Nancy has a RE/MAX office in Central Florida. And Nancy, she got in the business in 1972. And she said, look, I tell my agents this, and I'd be curious to get your feedback on Nancy's advice, Carlo. No offers, no showings, 10% reduction. Showings, no offers, 5% reduction. No discussion.
I love it. Love it.
And it's funny because I'm
going to use that. Is that okay if I use that?
Well, I'm sure Nancy would love it. Nancy said it.
I love it.
And so I just wanted to make sure we gave Nancy credit for that. But it's great, and that's the scale of adjustment that we've got to get happening, and so what great advice. That's fantastic. And I love, it's not just advice, but it's what you're most excited about is people can finally get comfortable with how to deal with this market.
And, they do it once or twice, and then they have the evidence. They go, okay, well, I guess this does work. And at the end, when the deal happens, the client is happy.
Mm-hmm.
They're someone said to me, tell your clients, say, look, especially when they're stressed. This one line got to me, and I think about it, and I tell people this all the time, say, how would it feel if the home was sold?
Mm-hmm.
I want you to close your eyes and think about what would that feel like? Mm-hmm. And they go, oh man, that would just be awesome. Okay, let's work towards that. How do we get there?
Yeah.
And that's how I brought it down with somebody once, and I got a major price reduction and sold it. And it worked because a lot of people are just really stressed right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great to hear that you've got that optimism for them and that they have that support. Carlo, I want to thank you for being a great guest today.
Fun. Hey, anytime.
You know what? We talk about so many things that are relevant in today's market, right? And about building relationships, about the value you can bring to agents, and about the promise of the future, a promise of a better future. And I think for all of us, as I said at the outset, I'm excited for our brokers to be able to hear it because you're one of those people moving the needle. Let me ask this question. How do people get in touch with you?
How do they get in touch with me? Well, it's pretty simple. Carlo at royallepage.ca, ROYALLEPAGE.ca, or 416-917-7010. Would love to hear from anybody.
I would highly encourage that. Carlo, thank you very much for being our guest today. Again, welcome on The Profitable Broker, where we're moving the needle. Thanks, Carlo.
Thank you for having me. Enjoyed this. Thank you.
Thanks. If today's episode resonated with you, hit subscribe or follow so you don't miss what's coming next. More stories, more lessons, and the unfiltered side of what it really takes to succeed in the market. I'm Wayne Einhorn, and this is The Profitable Broker. Real conversations about what it takes to run a successful brokerage. And we're just getting started. Let's go. This is The Profitable Broker.